It's Tuesday, August 4th, 2026, and this is Season 5, Episode 24 of Two Guys on Politics, broadcast on the U.S. Arab Radio Network on WNZK AM 690 Radio, as well as on YouTube at twoguysonpolitics.com. I'm Ray Hanania, and with my co-host, former Congressman Bill Lipinski. In today's Two Guys on Politics video podcast, we discuss a range of topics that include Mike Madigan's appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court on his conviction. We will talk about Trump's Iran war, on and off. Is it a war? Is it not a war? What the heck is going on? We may talk about the Save America Act, where he wants to force everybody to re-register to vote across the country. And we may touch on the fight over Anthony Fauci. We thought that was over, but Robert Kennedy Jr., his health dude, has resurfaced it. Then in the second segment, we're going to talk about the candidates running for mayor. Saw Alexi Giannoulis announcing with all the big insiders this past week, and there's about 8 others that are running. And we'll end it with a discussion about the Michigan election battle between Abdul El-Sayed versus Haley Stevens for the U.S. Senate seat Democratic primary election. We'll take a break and we'll be right back right after these messages.
I'm Bill Lipinski, and the next voice you hear will be just like Mel Torme, the Velvet Fog, Ray Hanania.
Okay, Muhammad Ali would have been a better comparison, but I'll take Mel Torme. He's a good dude. He's a good guy. So attorneys for former Illinois House Speaker Michael J. Madigan petitioned the U.S. Supreme Court last week on July 27th to review and overturn his conviction for allegedly using his political powers to benefit allies and himself, and in which they made allegations of bribery, fraud, and a bunch of related schemes. You know, Madigan is 84 years old, and they sentenced him, Bill, and we both know him, obviously, you more than me, but he's 84. They sentenced him to 7.5 years, and they put him in West Virginia, which is like 600 miles away from his wife, who is suffering, has many physical ailments. I mean, I don't like to publicize it all, but they've written about it, you know, already in the newspaper. She has cancer, and she's had a struggle with post-COVID related illnesses. It just seemed like they were out to get this guy, in my opinion, because he was the most powerful politician in Illinois and the longest serving Speaker of the Illinois House. I'm hoping
in the history, the longest serving Speaker in the history of this country.
Yes. And honestly, I mean, you know, what I liked about Mike, we didn't always agree on everything, but what I liked about Mike was he always would discuss the issues. So if I wrote a column that he didn't like, he didn't do what Jane Byrne did, you know, called me scum, kick me out, try to kick me out of the newsroom, tell people not to talk to me, you know, she did all kinds of crazy stuff. Mike would just, you know, disagree or have someone call me and say you're wrong, you know, and I'd try to get their view. But he was always respectful in that way. And I thought that's the way government should be, right? Isn't criticism part of the job?
Yeah, I thought the judge was very harsh on the sentence and what he had to say. And I really thought that the government's prosecution was extremely harsh. And I don't really believe it was justified at all. Now, I readily say Mike is a good friend of mine. He's been a good friend of mine since going all the way back to the late 1960s. But I frankly never found a more honest politician than Mike Madigan. And for him to be charged with something like this, and then to have the appellate court uphold it, I was really very surprised. I thought the appellate court might throw it out. I do hope and pray that the United States Supreme Court will decide that the decision was not correct and that they overturn it. And I have read the request by his attorneys to the Supreme Court in regards to the situation. And I was very much impressed with it. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I have consulted 5 other lawyers, and they all thought that the argument made by his attorneys to the Supreme Court thought that those arguments were very, very good. And they're hopeful that the Supreme Court will overturn the decision, or at least cut down the sentence, which I think is ridiculous, 7.5 years.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they're criminals that do far worse, that get like 3 to 7 years. They gave him the max. It was like they were trying to make a statement. And, I assume when you're the Speaker of the Illinois House, you're going to make a lot of political enemies everywhere. Someone's not going to be happy with, they didn't get this, they didn't get that. The very favoritisms, that he was accused of. And that was the interesting thing about the trial. When you read through, and it's very lengthy, but when you read through the charges and the case against him, they based it on RICO. And RICO, as you know, is the Racketeer Influence and Corruption Organizations Act. I always have to look that up because it's such a long name. They use RICO, prosecutors use RICO to go after street gangs. And the reason they do that is because they know that the street, and they're dealing with killings and drugs and robbery and physical beatings. Not like in Madigan's case, that's not what was involved. But in the street gang case, they get to the leader under RICO, even though the leader has done nothing other than be the leader of a gang that may have members that killed people, shot people, sold drugs. So if somebody sells a drug under RICO, they could arrest the guy that sells the drug and then arrest all the members of the organization to say that it's a racketeering, process and organization, and one big corrupt organization because one member does it. They use that. That was one of the 23 charges that they filed against Madigan. But ironically, the jury threw that foundation argument out. They rejected it. They said no. They voted against it. They denied that charge, and yet, and then they threw out 12 other charges that were related to the allegations against Madigan, and they convicted him on 10 charges. That besides the perjury, which is something that everybody um, like if you testify, they can find something that you don't that they think is wrong and accuse you of perjury. I mean, it's the easiest thing that the feds use. But most of the serious charges were based on RICO. To me, it made no sense. And I think that was the flaw. Now, he did appeal at one time, and unfortunately, the appellate court rejected his appeal. And Bill, as you know, going to the U.S. Supreme Court, that's a tough case because they only take like what, 5 to 10% of the appeals that are brought
That's
before the
right.
U.S. Supreme Court. So it's going to be a tough road.
Well, I think the 7.5 year sentence is just absolutely ridiculous.
Yes,
And I think that that sentence was imposed by the judge because the judge didn't like Madigan.
I
That's my
agree.
opinion.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I agree with you. I think this is all about a prejudicial, corrupt judicial system because that shouldn't, personal opinion shouldn't play into it. And there's no possible way. In fact, both the case and the appeal went through the same judge. This is the first time it goes away from the judge to the U.S. Supreme Court. And it just seemed wrong
Yes, it
that
is.
that judge stepped in, instead of having a fair appeal. Blakely, I think, is the guy's name. And it's disturbing that he was allowed to do that without any pushback, any proper pushback. But the case, and if people are interested in the appeal, they can go to the website where you and I write at hanania.com, And I have the link there in the story that I wrote about Madigan's case. It says the title is Attorneys for Michael J. Madigan petition U.S. Supreme Court to reverse conviction. The link is there if you want to read it. It's lengthy, and in addition, that link also includes, when you click it, all of the past evidence that they used against Madigan. So you can see the entire case. It's several hundred pages long. It's a book, actually. But I
It's
agree with,
very interesting if you have the time to read it. Very interesting.
yes, yes, it is. And, I mean, listen, the fundamental attack against Madigan is he did people favors. So he got somebody a job and a couple people a job because they were loyalists and supporters, but they didn't show up to the job. And he got blamed for them not showing up to the job. They never proved or showed that there was any evidence where he said, I'm going to give you this job. You don't have to show up for the job. That,
Absolutely not. No evidence whatsoever.
yeah. So they had guys that, well, and they were charged, and some of them I heard their charges were overturned. So some of the
Yes, they were.
convictions were overturned. So now I'm thinking, are those charges, which were fundamental to this case, overturned, and yet Madigan's is still in there? It has to be a bias and a prejudice, against him, and
Yes, I think that's absolutely true.
not
And here, I just want to mention this. There is not one shred of evidence, nor was it ever charged by the prosecution, that Madigan took a nickel for anything that he ever did. There was no money involved in this case whatsoever. There was another individual from the Chicago organization who a couple of years ago was sent to jail for 2.5 years, and it was proven there he took a considerable amount of money, for
Yeah,
favors that he had done for people.
yeah, I agree with you. It's like he took no money. Did he get benefit from politics? If they can convict Madigan, they can convict every elected politician, not just in Chicago, but in Cook County, in Northern Illinois, the state of Illinois, and in many other states, where the process of organization, you support me, I reward you. That's the system, isn't it, for the machine? And it's legal. It's not money. I'm not taking money legally. I just have somebody that supports me, and I said, yeah, I'm going to make you my lieutenant. I'm going to hire you to work for me, or I'm going to help you get a job because I want to see you do well because you're my ally. Who supports their enemy, right? Does anybody get a job for their enemy?
Not that I know of. As Mayor Richard J. Daley once said, if I can't help my son, who can I help?
Right. It was like when, remember, he got his son some insurance business, right? And then,
Right.
and I think that's what provoked that
Yes.
statement from him to respond to the people. Yeah. So I'm praying that the U.S. Supreme Court looks at this. Maybe they treat it differently. I'm worried though, because, we're in a world where uh, polarized politics, conservatives versus Democrats. Mike Madigan is a conservative Democrat, I think, and but not as conservative as the U.S. Supreme Court and the Republican Party, which controls it. And they've been doing a lot of political stuff. So I'm a little concerned, but if everything were fair, they would throw this case out. Worst case scenario should be maybe they sentence him to 1 or 2 years, but 7.5 years is just outrageous, in my opinion.
Well, I don't think he should be sentenced to anything because I don't think he's guilty of anything. But that's my opinion. Once again, I say, he's a good friend of mine. I think the world of him.
Yes.
There was no more honest politician I ever met in my entire career. And there's no one I know of that has done more for the state of Illinois in a positive way than Mike Madigan.
Yes. And like I said, I mean, he's a elected official. He took the criticism, he took the praise, He's done a lot of things that I agree, many things that I agree with. I think was always a great leader. A few things that I didn't agree with when he endorsed Jane Byrne, over Rich Daley. But that was a local fight between the Daleys and the Madigans and the Burkes. Wasn't that a local ward thing,
Yes,
rivalry?
it was. Yes.
Yeah. So
Well, didn't
that
you support Jane Byrne in the original?
the
Weren't you a Jane
original, yeah,
Byrne
I did. And
supporter
then, of course,
originally?
what happens in Chicago politics? You support somebody and they turn against you as soon as And I supported Daley. I supported Jane Byrne because, and although Bolandic was just a great guy, in truth, I didn't really support Jane Byrne.
But he
I
was,
just covered
but
her.
he was a terrible mayor.
Yeah,
Bolandic was a terrible mayor.
but he would at least talk to you.
Made a good judge. He was a good judge,
And,
but he was a
yeah,
terrible mayor.
I did marathons with him and we got to talk about government and stuff. He loved marathons. I remember he'd do marathons all
Oh,
the time.
yes, he did.
Yeah, and of course,
I didn't know you were marathon running.
well, I ended up
You ran
writing
marathons?
well only with him because I had to cover him.
Oh,
And that was,
I
that was
see.
the
Okay.
big story of the Tribune the day that I got assigned to City Hall. The headline of the front page of the Tribune. Today it's war, destruction, and murder. But back then in 1978, the headline was Bolandic to run in marathon I can't remember the name of it. It was the marathon in Mount Greenwood and Beverly Hills there. They had a name for it. And that was like the headline. And Bob Davis, his junior, as you remember from the Tribune, you knew him very
Oh,
well.
sure.
He bragged about how he had that big exclusive. And that's why nobody at the Southtown wanted to cover City Hall because it was boring. It was about marathons, not politics. And I was the only idiot that said, okay, I'll go to City Hall and cover it. And then Jane Byrne
Once
popped
Jane
up.
Byrne got there, that changed.
It did change.
Yeah.
All right. And then talking about wacky
Let me, let me
politics.
let me set the record straight. I was hanging Jane Byrne on you, saying you supported her at one time, but I supported her at one time also. So if you're guilty of it, I was guilty of it also. But we both learned we made a mistake.
Well, yes. Listen, she wasn't the reformer that she said she was going to be. She turned out to be the machine. She just wanted to take over the machine and she put her buddies
Right.
in charge. So, all right. And another candidate who was deceived us, Donald Trump deceived the American public. He is pushing the Iran war. He's suspending the Iran war. He's attacking one day. He's now saying we're in negotiations. Obviously, the Iran war is a major factor in the November elections and the primaries, and he's very concerned about that. And he's trying to either distract us with other issues or trying to say, "Don't worry about the war. We got it taken care of." What's going on with the Iran war, Bill?
Well, as you know, I supported this war right from the beginning. I have to say, in all honesty, I no longer can support this war because I don't know what's going on. I don't think the president knows what's going on.
Right.
We are in a quagmire. And the reason we're in a quagmire is because our tough leader doesn't know what to do.
Right.
The thing to do is to take out the regime once and for all. That's the only way to do it. That's the way it should have been done in the very first place. In this baloney about they're negotiating, one day they're not negotiating, this just goes on and on and on. There's been 11 times that Trump said he was going to, blow them to smithereens. And the next day he says, well, they're negotiating in good faith now. We're going to give them more opportunity. He's afraid to do anything. He's paralyzed. He's afraid to just say, the war's over, we're coming home, because he'll get criticized for that. He's afraid to put any boots on the ground or to increase the bombing because he'll get criticized for that. His party is definitely going down in the midterm elections in the House of Representatives. The Democrats will take over the House of Representatives. And Lord only knows what's going to happen in the Senate, because there are several races in the Senate that look like they're going to be pretty close, that at the present time are Republican seats, but it seems like the Democrats are going to have a shot against Trump. Now, I'm all for divided government. I believe in divided government. The American people are better off when we have divided government. So I want to see the Democrats control the House. When Trump ran last time for president, I didn't vote for him. I didn't vote for his opponent. I said I didn't care who got elected president, as long as the opposite party controlled either the House or the Senate as a block on whoever the president would be. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. And some of the things that Trump has done since he has been president has made him a reprehensible character as far as I am concerned. And if I was making a decision now and I had blundered as badly as he has blundered, I'd simply go on television tonight and say, I decided we won, we're coming home, and just leave it go at that. Even though the strait would not be open, and that's a terrible thing, we will not have destroyed their capacity to have nuclear weapons. But with him and as president, it's never going to happen. So let's get out of there. Let's stop wasting the money. Let's stop the gas prices from going higher and higher. That's my position now. I'm sorry to say.
Well, I agree that Trump has no idea how to run a war, to win a war. You can't go in. He just thinks, hey, we can just beat him up and then they'll do whatever I want because, he does that in business. He beats people up and forces them to do whatever he wants and then takes over. And he does it usually in secrecy. Now he has to do it in public and he hates the media for it. He attacks the media for questioning him. When they ask him about it, he calls them names. He is a, misogynist. He calls women piggies, tells them to shut up, the female reporters. This guy is a classless embarrassment for the country. And even some of his appointments are in trouble. So this guy, I think, sees that he's in trouble. So now he's trying to get away from the Iran war. He doesn't want to end it because I think he's hoping that he can survive the November elections and then continue with his agenda. But he's in trouble in these elections. And I think it's like a bell curve. It's a wave. Sometimes he's really bad trouble. Sometimes he's not so bad trouble. I think the Democrats are going to take the Senate, and depending on when that wave is, it may be really big, or it may just be just enough to control the Senate too. But here's another guy. He appointed, Trump wants to do two things. He wants to impact the election by passing the Save America Act to force everybody to re-register. And it's going to be a process, I think, where he's going to keep people from registering in Democratic states, just like he's denied funding to Democratic states that voted against him. He's denied federal funding to them. I think that he's going to try to manipulate the elections and has given up on the idea that let's create a war and everybody will rally behind me and I'll win the election that way. Well, obviously that failed.
Well, I think that there's not going to be any law passed saying that everybody has to re-register. That's not going to happen. There's no Republican. No, I shouldn't say there is not enough Republican support for that. But what I do understand, they passed a law which still has to. The House passed a bill that the Senate has to pass, and he would have to sign. But there is a bill that passed the House of Representatives. It's now in the Senate that does say you have to show an ID when you vote. It doesn't say what kind of ID. It could be, a driver's license. It could be a library card. It could be a credit card. I don't really see anything wrong with that, quite frankly. And neither does your very good friend, the mayor of New York City, because the mayor of New York City wants to make sure that those people who are eating at the grocery stores that he has set up in New York are New York City residents. So you have to prove that you are a New York City resident in order to shop at one of his grocery stores. So there you have the far right with Trump and the far left with your buddy coming together to see to it that elections are honest.
Now, there was an issue, though, you had with Mamdani, though, on that, right? He wants you to have an ID to get access to the city's services, but is he opposed to access for voting, or does he not care? Do you know?
No, he doesn't. He's opposed to access
or having an ID,
he
right?
Yeah, you don't have to show anything when you vote, but
No,
if
no.
you want to buy something at his grocery store, you got to show an ID. It's
Yeah,
a
no,
little inconsistent.
I disagree with that, but as Reagan said, 80% is good enough agreement, 20% you don't have to hate the guy. I personally believe that anybody who votes has to identify themselves, period. I don't care. And you should have to show an ID because there are people that want to steal votes and they want to vote who aren't qualified to vote. And we should know. I have no problem showing my driver's license
I don't
or
either.
yeah, and I think everybody should be required. You can't just walk up and say, how do you know who you are? Right? And you got to give them your name and your address. You just make up an address and vote. That would be open to theft, I think. So I think that's the one thing I agree with that there is a big debate on by the far left against the far right. But I think people in the middle agree with that. All right, let's take a break, Bill, and then
Yes,
when we
I,
come back, we can
okay.
talk about who the candidates are in Chicago, and then we can touch on the Michigan elections between Abdul Sayed and Haley Stevens. We'll be right back right after these messages. And welcome back to Two Guys on Politics. Bill, why is it? Maybe you can answer this question. You were in Chicago politics for many years. Me too. I covered it, but I'm still having trouble trying to answer this question. Why would anybody want to be the mayor of Chicago when Chicago has so many problems? They can't generate enough income to cover their own bills. They got to take money from the suburbs and the rest of the state to cover their costs of schools, policing, everything. Who would want to be the mayor of a problem, a quagmire like that? Why do they want to do it?
Well, I believe that people who run for mayor of the city of Chicago think that if they get elected mayor of Chicago, they are not just going to be the mayor of Chicago, they are going to be the new Richard J. Daley and
Right.
have all that power and influence that he had. And that's what people in politics are after, power and influence. Well, we've had several mayors, including his son, since Richard J. Daley died. None of them came close to having the power, the influence, or the personality that he had. And there never will be another Richard J. Daley because his time and his place was in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. That time has passed. I don't care who gets elected mayor of Chicago. There's never going to be another Richard J. Daley. And who would want that job? Well, right now we have one guy serving in the job, and we have 10 people that have announced that they want to run for the job. So there must be something to it. It certainly can't be that it's an easy spot, though. There's no question about it.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. Under Richard J. Daley and then later under Richard M. Daley, he had consensus and support from a majority. And unfortunately, when you have a majority and overwhelming support in the city council, they call that a machine. But the truth is that when you have
Right.
everybody coming together, you can come to an agreement on policies. And you're right. In today's world, the city council is almost 25 to 25, and Mayor Brandon Johnson has to step in sometimes and vote to break a tie. And it's conflict and fighting all the time. And the mayor doesn't just represent the people. He was elected by the Chicago Teachers Union. And I don't personally, this is my opinion. I love unions. I was a union member when I was a journalist. I've always been a union supporter, but I don't believe that unions should actually have people in office representing the union agenda. Because when the union has to negotiate with the government on wages for their members, you have to have some form of checks and balances. But if the mayor's a union member and he's negotiating with the union who got him elected, there's no negotiation, there's no checks and balances. And I think that's part of the problem of Mayor Brandon Johnson's administration.
I agree with you totally. I also think that he was never elected to anything before as far as politics goes, as far as government goes. I just don't think he was qualified for the position in the first place. He was really the second choice of the union. The first choice of the union was the president of the union. But she learned that she couldn't be elected. So she looked around for somebody else and she picked him, and her union got him elected mayor of the city of Chicago. I don't think that he can be reelected again. I really have no idea which one of the 10 people that are running against him is going to be elected mayor of the city of Chicago. I think several of them are good candidates. Some of them are total waste of time as far as I'm concerned. I don't know how many of them will actually wind up, filing and really running for mayor of the city of Chicago. But I don't think that the incumbent can win. In fact, I would not be surprised if he decides he's not going to run and the teachers union backs somebody else that has some more competence than he has shown in the time he's been in office. The thing I want to comment on, though, Ray, for years and years, the news media in Chicago, the newspapers, radio, television, criticized aldermen for not standing up, to the mayor, not taking an independent course. Okay.
Right.
Day after day after day. Now that the aldermen are standing up, they are calling them obstructionists.
Right. They get attacked.
Right, exactly. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Well, it's not amazing because that's what the media does. The media wants conflict. They want to write about conflict. News stories about walking the little old lady across the street, don't drive advertising, but some guy getting shot and killed on the south side or the west side or whatever, that sells newspapers, as they say. So they will do whatever they can to gin up the criticism and the controversy. That is exactly what they want. So they encourage people. This is an interesting phenomena in Chicago media and politics. It's election season. Alexi Giannoulis announces, for example, I'm just using him as an example, that he's going to run for mayor. He has all that controversy behind him about his father's bank, where he did a terrible job with this investment program. The federal government had to bail it out. They gave money to the mob. The bank had all kinds of problems. They blamed it on Giannoulis. I didn't see any of that as they were patting him on the back, going, "Yeah, Alexi, get in the race. We need you. You're doing great." And because when the time comes for the election, 6 weeks before, they're going to be pounding him on that stuff because that's how they sell newspapers. But in his case, here's what I see brewing, Bill, and I don't know if you see this too. I think the CTU will probably, if they don't back Brandon Johnson, they'll find another candidate. I think it'll be Brandon Johnson because it'll be easier and harder to swap somebody out. But I see a rivalry now between all the other unions who are behind Alexi Giannoulis. And those unions are going to be fighting with the CTU, in my opinion. You're going to have these two union blocks going nuts against each other. But in a race with 10, 12 candidates, you only need 20% of the vote to lead, to get into a runoff, right? The two top candidates, if they get 40% between the two of them, that'll probably be a majority. And I don't think money is going to win the election. And that Giannoulis came in with $22 million. I think I'm tired of wealthy people with millions running any government.
Don't undersell money in politics, right? Don't ever undersell it. It's very, very important.
Well, in today's changing world,
I want to say about you.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was going
to about now. He got off on the wrong foot as far as I'm concerned, because he's running for re-election as Secretary of State.
That's
so for the past 2.5 weeks, he's been doing commercials, okay, and saying what a great guy he is, how much he's accomplished. It never said what he was running for.
Right.
It didn't say he was running for Secretary of State.
Right.
He hadn't announced yet that he was running for mayor. But I told people, I saw the commercials. I thought the commercials were excellent. And I says, but those commercials are not for Secretary of State. Those commercials are for him running for mayor of the city of Chicago.
Yes.
And sure enough, it was. So as far as I'm concerned, right off the bat, he starts deceiving the people by making them believe these are commercials to help him be reelected Secretary of State. But they weren't. They were commercials to aid and assist him in becoming mayor of the city of Chicago. I think he was duplicitous. That's my
Yeah.
opinion on it. Otherwise, I think he's a good candidate, but I have no idea who's going to be the final two candidates.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think, listen, this whole process where a guy, he's going to be elected in November 3rd as reelected as Secretary of State, and now he's running
No
for
question about
mayor.
it.
Why would I vote for him for Secretary of State if he's going to run for mayor? I mean,
Right.
it's just, there's something wrong with the system. The state of Illinois and Governor Pritzker, who moved the election process earlier, there's something wrong with them where they believe it doesn't matter. There is no opposition. We control everything. So what? Let's just have the mayoral election start 3 months before we end with the last elections for the state of Illinois. There's a 3 month overlap there. There's something wrong with that, and I think it's wrong. But Pritzker's people are supporting Giannoulis. And Pritzker, Mr. Billionaire,
Yes.
Daddy Warbucks, he can buy his own election. He doesn't need any money. Giannoulis has $22 million. All these other candidates who I think are closer to the people are going to get pushed aside by money, and I think that's wrong. And for that reason, did Giannoulis ever learn the lesson of, remember that guy, Raja Krishnamurthy? He spent all that
Oh,
money.
yes, I remember him. Absolutely, yes.
I think maybe what Giannoulis should do is, hi, my name is Alexi Giannoulis. Here's how you spell my name. And spend $5 million just getting people to understand how to pronounce his name. The same way Raja Krishnamurthy did that. Because honestly, I don't trust Giannoulis. And like I said, he is a decent guy, but I don't trust him. This is politics at its worst. And that he embraced it is something that I think is wrong. Now, there are other
Well,
candidates. Go ahead.
do you have a favorite candidate at the present time?
Yes. Now, I have a personal favorite because I've known this person since I left the Chicago Sun-Times in the 1990s. Maria Pappas, she recognized the significance of the media. She hired me way back then when I left the Sun-Times and I was fighting the Sun-Times. I ended up beating the Sun-Times in that fight that we had, but nonetheless, I ended up leaving and going into political consulting and writing for papers all over the country. It was the best thing that happened to me when I left the Sun-Times for my career. But she reached out and said, hey, I could use your help. She was a first-term member of the Cook County Board. She's brilliant, she's smart, and she hasn't announced yet. And I don't think she's going to announce until the very last minute, at least in deference to the fact that it'll be after the November 3rd election. But she's my favorite. I think she's smart. She's done so much as Cook County Treasurer, for example. She has refunded over $600 million in overpayments in property tax payments that have been made by people. So when you make a mistake and write a check for $3,000, Bill, the tendency of government is don't give the money back to Bill Lipinski, keep the money. Government never returns tax dollars. She started a system where if you overpaid, that you got your money back, and she's returned $600 million to homeowners all over Cook County and the city of Chicago. And I think that's a phenomenal thing. So I like her. That's my favorite.
Okay, well,
Do you
I
have a
haven't
favorite
selected
in
one
there?
as of yet.
You
Not
haven't.
yet. No, not yet.
Susana
There are
Mendoza
several
is a
people
nice
that are
person.
running. Pardon?
Susana
Who?
Mendoza, the
Oh, yeah, I
comptroller.
like her.
Yeah, she's a decent person. Mike
Oh,
Quigley, I don't know if you
I
knew
think
him.
Mike Quigley is another one. Yeah, Mike, I like Mike.
George
Yeah,
Cardenas.
I haven't, I don't know George. But I
Willie
haven't,
Wilson is running.
is he running again?
Yeah, now he's run for everything. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 offices. He's a good guy,
Yes,
successful
yes, he is.
businessman, made millions, genuinely nice guy, helps people in need. I just don't think he could win. And then I think
I don't
Alderman Bill
either.
Conway wants to run also. There are a couple others that are in the wings. So it's going to be a big field. John Kelly, he's like a big businessman, right?
Yes, he
Business-minded
is.
candidate, and he has a lot of clout too. So every one of these is going to get 10% of the vote, and that's 80% right there. Someone's going to have to get 15 to 20% to win, right? That's going to be rough. And oh, Bill, let me ask you a question. Is it fair that a candidate for this petition signatures, they got to get 15, I think it's 12,000 signatures or 11,500 signatures. But that reminded me of the Chris Getty race, where if you're running for Congress, all you need is 450 signatures. But if you want to run as an independent, you got to get 12,000 signatures, and they kick two people off. It seems like this whole signature process is rigged to help the incumbents and keep the independents out. What do you think?
Well,
You're an
it's
insider.
rigged to help the two parties. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
The parties don't want independent candidates. They want party candidates. The one guy that was kicked off the ballot is suing the Board of
Yeah.
Election Commissioners, I think,
Alderman Joe Lopez.
over this, why he got kicked off. Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised, if you could get a judge that was really fair, he
Right.
might possibly be able to win that, because it's ridiculous. A party person has to get 500 signatures, an independent has to get 12,000. That's not democracy. I mean, that's a totalitarian state.
Yes. No, I agree with you 100%. And but let's just hope he doesn't get Judge Blakely, who's Madigan's judge, because I don't think he'd be very fair.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
I agree.
And let's switch. So it's still early on the mayoral race, and the fact that we're even talking about this now is just kind of absurd. I think this shouldn't have started until
Well, it's
December.
only because,
The
but Giannoulis started it by doing the commercials and saying he's
Yes,
going to run. So he started it off.
yes, and
Okay, let's talk about Michigan.
yeah, and then his supporter Governor J.B. Pritzker, who raised $800 million in new taxes, by the way, in this state just in the past year. This is the worst state when it comes to taxes. I don't know why anybody would want to be associated with Pritzker as a candidate outside of getting money from him. All right, yes, in Michigan, the war between the progressives and what would you call the Democrats, the establishment Democrats is raging. And the polling shows that progressive, or if you call him a democratic socialist, Abdul El Sayed is tied or maybe leading Haley Stevens, who is the establishment Democrat who worked with Hillary Clinton as a aide and also with Barack Obama at one point. That race is notable because AIPAC has poured almost $35 million into stopping Abdul Sayed from winning because he has criticized Israel. And that's the largest contribution they've ever made in any single race, $35 million. They're going to stop him. And she also got it. Haley Stevens got another 30 million in quote unquote dark money pack from these unassigned not-for-profit groups that don't have to tell you who donated the money. And Abdul Sayed, I think, has raised 5 million, possibly as much as 10 million. But she's raised over 65 million. What do you think of that race, Bill? Does any of this
Where
matter?
does that money that he raised, does that come from Iran?
They've said that. They have said that. There are people in the
Uh,
campaign that are claiming that. But He got it from
Well,
all over the
this is going
country. It
to
did. It came from all over the country. Bernie Sanders and
nickels and dimes from all over the country. Yes,
that's right.
he's a
Ilhan
candidate of the
Omar.
people
Oh, right. The
from the
progressive.
grassroots. Yes, Omar the tent maker. That's who supports him.
Right.
Well, here I'm going to surprise you, Ray.
Go ahead.
Any poll that I have seen says that your buddy is up by 10 to 15 points. I believe that he will win the primary. I believe he will win the primary going away. He says he is not a democratic socialist. He says that he is a progressive. Now, where he deviates from the democratic socialist, I don't really know.
Right.
I do know that he comes across as a very intelligent man. He comes across as a very friendly man. He reminds me a great deal of the mayor of New York City, down to earth, friendly, intelligent, makes a good candidate, makes a very good campaigner. So I believe that he wins the primary going away. Now, most people at the present time say that he will be defeated overwhelmingly in the general election. I don't agree with that.
Yeah,
I think that he
agree
can
with
run
you.
a very good race against the Republican candidate.
Gary
And
Peters.
I'm not so sure the Republican candidate.
Yeah,
He was
I
a former
believe it's
congressman.
Republican. Oh, I'm
His
sorry.
name-
No. It's they're succeeding Gary Peters, the Democrat, and they'll be
Right.
running against in November Mike Rogers. The Republican candidate is
Right,
Mike
Mike.
Rogers. Right.
I thought he was a very good congressman, but he doesn't have much charisma.
Right.
I mean, he's going to pale in comparison to your buddy Omar the tent maker. Okay, but I believe that Omar the tent maker can win that election and very possibly. You don't like my nickname for him, huh?
That's all right. Go ahead. It's fine.
I have a hard time getting out Elsa. No, give me his name again. What's his name?
Abdul
Your candidate.
El-Sayed. Abdul El-Sayed.
Yeah.
Listen, they had the same problem.
Could I just call him?
Call him El-Sayed. Just call him El-Sayed.
Manda-
Yeah, listen,
El-Sayed, okay.
ethnicity and names are major factors in elections. Have been, at least up until in recent years.
No
That's
question
why
about it.
Raja
I think
Krishnamurthy had to explain how to say his name.
But unfortunately, that's all he did. He didn't do anything else.
That's true.
And I forgot all about him. He faded into the past very easily. No, I think that your candidate can win the Senate race. And if that happens, that drives the Democratic Party, I think, even further left. Because in reality, even though he says he's not a democratic socialist, the vast majority of the things that he supports are planks in their platform.
Right.
So I think that the Democratic Party is moving further and further left. Bernie Sanders is finally going to get his wish in his dream. There will be a socialist candidate on the ballot as the Democratic Party's candidate for president of the United States the next time around. Now, I think Bernie Sanders is totally and completely wrong in everything he believes. But I've said it and I'll say it again. Bernie is one of the nicest people I met in Congress. He was down to earth. He was friendly. He was helpful. He was cooperative. I like Bernie Sanders. I would never vote for him, just like I never voted for Trump, because the positions that they support, I think both of them in reality are anti-American. But I believe his candidate in Michigan can win, and I'll predict right now he will win that race. And that may enable the Democrats to control the U.S. Senate. And they can thank Donald Trump for an awful lot of their victories.
Now, here's the one interesting aspect that I don't know if you've thought of or that the public thinks of. The fact that there's this big magnet of progressives that you call democratic socialists. Now, the term socialism means helping the poor and the middle class, in my opinion, but we don't need to debate that. But this group
well, that's your opinion, yes.
Right. But this group on the far left is pulling the Democrats, who I think have been too conservative and not loyal to the party. And I think they're moving it to the center. And in order for those mainstream Democrats to control the party, they have to adjust. 103 of them voted against support funding Israel and said that money, which by the way is Al Sayed's position, I'm not against Israel. I just don't want to give them my money when I need to use that money to feed the people in Michigan. And that's a compelling argument in today's world. 103 Democrats voted against that, and the rest of them stuck by Israel. And I think that's changing. And I'm not saying we should go against Israel, but I think that this allowing Israel's government, Netanyahu, to push us around, use our money to do whatever he wants to do with it, that needs to stop. And I think that's what we're seeing. And I think we'll see the Democratic Party in November, assuming they win, have a much more centrist view. If they're going to come together, they're going to have to find a way to compromise with each other, with both sides.
I disagree with you on that. I think it will drive the Democratic Party further left. Of course, it might be my wishful thinking, because if that happens, then my man Marco Rubio becomes the president of the United States, and we get things straightened out once again in this country.
And I think that's how Donald Trump got elected to office, for the very reason that the Democrats were disorganized, had bad leadership, their issues, and not just the far left. It was the far right Democrats, Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, Kamala Harris. They were out of touch with everyday people. It just was a certain thing, and I think they brought on their own demise. It is going to be an interesting election again. We are not out of this polarization, though, right? We're still in it through the next
absolutely
election.
not.
Yeah, we're going to be in it for a while.
Very,
right.
very disappointing. Yep.
Any other thoughts, Bill, on that election? But I think I agree with your prediction about that Michigan election, that Abdul Sayed.
I knew you would.
But I
Yes.
think he's still going to beat the other that guy Rogers, because Rogers is going to get a lot of money from AIPAC. He's going to get a lot of money. They're going to give him. They'll beat their 35
He's already
million.
got a lot of.
Yeah,
he's already got a lot of money.
Yeah.
And as I say, he was a very good congressman. He was to the right of center, but he has no charisma. He's a plotter. Your buddy there, the candidate on the Democratic side, he's a stallion. He's a racehorse. He's handsome. He's intelligent. He's charismatic, and he's going to be running against the plow horse, Roger. I don't think the plow horse has a chance, but maybe I'll be wrong.
All right,
We'll
Bill. I'm Ray Hanania.
I'm Bill Lipinski, and this is Two Guys on Politics. And if no one gets us after this program, we'll be with you next week.
All right. Well, have a great week, everybody. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.